Hi, my name is Matt Scoble. I'm a photographer, videographer, and a full-time remote worker in the tech industry, and this is my 2020 PleasureWay Tofino. November of last year, I pulled the trigger on this 2020 Tofino from a company called PleasureWay. Now, almost a year later, I want to give you a walkthrough, my initial impressions, and let you know whether this $70,000 RV is actually worth the asking price. All right, so before we get into this, let me tell you a little bit about myself to help put this whole thing into context. So I do work remotely full-time in the tech industry, but I don't actually live inside this vehicle. I do travel solo quite often, but sometimes I do travel with a partner. Most of my trips are weekend adventures, but often I have stayed in this vehicle for up to a month at a time. Other than like the crazy amount of photography equipment I have, I actually do travel pretty light, but I am 6 feet tall and I do have a 45-pound dog named Alpine who you're going to get to meet in the next video. Probably the most important piece of information about this review is that I'm coming from a 1987 Volkswagen Westfalia, and honestly I would probably still be in that vehicle today if there wasn't for a few problems that I encountered. Now, everyone knows these are great vehicles, they're super fun, they're great weekend adventurers, and people do live in them, but I just couldn't deal with the reliability. I mean, being in the Canadian Rockies, being out in the backcountry without cell phone signal, I just couldn't risk getting stuck in that vehicle not starting, and I needed something that I could guarantee would, well, pretty much guarantee would stay on the road. All right, so let's get started. We're actually going to start up front at the engine. We're going to work our way all the way to the back. With a quick stop to go upstairs to the Poptop, we'll go out and take a look at the exterior, and then I'll end this by talking about PleasureWay and Dodge and some of the issues that I've actually had since I bought this vehicle and what's been covered under the warranty. All right, so up front, the Tofino is based on the 2019 Dodge Ram ProMaster 1500. But it maintains the same 280 horsepower, 3.6 liter engine with 260 pound-feet of torque as its much larger cousin, the 3500 ProMaster, which is the largest ProMaster that Ram makes. All right, so what all these specs really mean is that even with the weight of this build-out, I've had absolutely no issues with this vehicle in terms of acceleration, climbing, or mileage. Now, the handling and turning radius in this vehicle have been really good, but the suspension actually produces quite a bit of sway on rough terrain, which is a little bit annoying. Okay, so on the bad side, this is not a four-wheel drive vehicle. It is a front-wheel drive vehicle without a lot of ground clearance. So that kind of means without any kind of modifications, this is not a vehicle that you're going to want to push too hard on rough or off-road terrain. Now, with all of this being said, the Tofino comes with stock mud and snow tires, and I've actually found the traction on this vehicle to be pretty good in most terrains, even in the winter. All right, so moving up even further into the cab, if you didn't turn around and look at the back, you could really imagine that you're actually in a work truck. This clipboard over here kind of gives it away. But on the plus side, because the ProMaster is actually a work truck, there is a lot of storage up here. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Overall, I have to say I'm pretty happy with the design up here. It's simple, it's practical. And I only really have a couple complaints. All right, so the first of those complaints is actually a pretty big one, and it's the entertainment system in this vehicle. This thing right here is just an absolute disaster in my opinion. I can't even tell you how frustrating this thing is. The interface is terrible. I constantly have trouble connecting to Bluetooth. It does have a rear backup camera, but the screen itself is so dim that I can't even see what I'm seeing out the back in daylight. Bluetooth has about a 1-second delay, so if you want to use the audio in this vehicle to play a Netflix video at night, forget it. Navigation is awful. There's no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. I would honestly have thrown this thing out already, but I haven't quite found a unit that I want to replace it with. If you've maybe got suggestions for me, drop a comment and let me know what would be a good option. So the second big complaint is probably the privacy shades that come with this vehicle. Now, this is actually a really nice bonus. There are custom-made privacy shades that PleasureWay included, but I'm actually finding them to be more and more annoying the more I use them. There's one big main one up here for the front window. That one's not bad to install. You just kind of flip up the vanity shades, move the mirror out of the way, and it's ready to go. But the side ones actually pinch inside the door frame, which means that when you're parking at night and you're trying to put up the privacy shades, you find yourself either having to leave the vehicle to go around to install them, or just kind of leaning out the vehicle, trying to hold on while you install the privacy shades and then shut the door. All right, so the comfort up here in the front is pretty basic, but for me, it's been plenty comfortable for long road trips. Everything on the seat is completely manual. I love the armrests. They're great for long road trips. They come down pretty easily. And these seats do actually rotate 180 degrees. Now, they rotate very easily, but it is very difficult to unlatch them to rotate. So there's two latches on this vehicle. One will actually recline the seat and one will rotate it. And they're very, very difficult to pull unless you're sitting in the seat itself. And then once you've got the seat rotated 180 degrees, you quickly forget which side was which, and you find you end up pulling the seat to rotate it, and it actually reclines and vice versa. So seats are pretty good, but there's a little bit of room for improvement there. Now, visibility on this vehicle is pretty interesting. Out front, the visibility is incredible. Nice big windows, lots of space, and other than that little crack that you can see there in my vehicle, the windshield has been fantastic. The side visibility is a hit and miss. The actual rear view mirrors are great. There's an upper level and a lower level for a wide angle. But there's this little bar that you can see kind of just right between the front passenger seat and the back sliding door. And that makes it really hard to see left-hand turns, especially if the road is a little bit, crooked. The rear view mirror is sort of useless in this vehicle. There's a big bar right between the two windows in the back, so if you're kind of driving down the highway and you want to see who's behind you, there's oftentimes that vehicle in the back will be pretty much blocked by that bar. Overall, I gotta say I really don't have any complaints about this front area other than this entertainment system. It's comfortable, it's practical, and to me it just really suits the rest of the van. All right, so if we spin these seats around, we can take a look at what we would call the kitchen area or the galley. Now I'll start with this induction cooktop. Now, I've had absolutely really no issues with this other than one minor thing, which is it does sometimes overheat if you're cooking something with a lid. I don't know why that is, it's just something I've noticed. But I would never trade this for a propane option. It is nice and efficient, keeps the van pretty cool when you're cooking, and doesn't take up a lot of space. You can store stuff right on top of it when you're not using it. Now for me, there's more than enough counter space in this vehicle. There is one slight modification that I did make to this, which is turning this particular thing into a cutting board. That's a huge help. I'll show you that in the next video. But overall, I mean, the space is great. The sink itself is big enough for me as well. It's fairly deep. Really don't have any issues other than this faucet right here, which although is, looks pretty nice, is actually splashes quite a bit when you have it on full. This is a good time to point out that there is no hot water in the Tofino. For some people, that's a huge deal breaker. For me, I was used to that in the Westfalia, so it's not really a big deal. It would be nice to have sometimes, but overall I find I boil a quick pot of water and use it for dishes if I need to. The fridge and freezer, which is right here, for me, it's big enough to use. I don't really have any complaints in terms of the size. I can fit lots of stuff in here. There's a freezer up top, so that's really no issue. The only kind of complaints I have about this is the shelves here are a little bit weird. They don't quite go in properly. I just struggle with them all the time. And then there's also a small issue. The fridge itself is actually tripping the fuse and causing it to turn off. There's a fix to this. It's a quick reprogram, but that is one minor thing that I found with this fridge. All right, so right beside the fridge is a cupboard, and then beside that one is another cupboard, and that is actually all the storage there is up here in the kitchen area. So if you're the type of person that carries a lot of kitchen stuff, I think you're really going to struggle finding proper storage here in the Tofino. There's lots of options for modifications, lots of creative ways you can do this, but rolling off of the dealer lot, there's really not a lot of places to put your kitchen items. So at this point, I think we can probably talk about this portable table that comes with the Tofino. Kind of a love-hate relationship with this thing. It's actually stored right here beside me. You can just pull this latch and this latch, and the fridge pops out. There she goes. Now, the thing about the fridge is that it is ultra flexible. So I've had the fridge up here in the front between these two seats. I've had it in the back sitting on the couch. I've had it sitting as a table when the bed's down. I've had it all the way in the garage as a seating area. Actually, a pretty nice little spot to sit and have dinner. I've had it outside for barbecuing. I've used it as a utility, for bike parts or for something that I'm working on. The only disadvantage is the table is not that big. So if you're having a, two-person meal, or, worse, you've got 4 people in this vehicle, which is actually designed and built for, it's really not a lot of space. I do find assembling it pretty quick, but sometimes I find that the feet actually get kind of caught together and it's a little bit of a challenge. This is also one of the things that I've had to have fixed in this van. There's sort of a pretty big list. Nothing major, but this is something where the glue on the actual stand for the fridge came loose and I had to get another part to replace it. All right, so if you stand up in here, the first thing you're going to notice is there is a lot of headroom. It measures probably about 9 feet or more from top to bottom. And you can see me reaching up. I'm 6 foot tall and I can't even touch the top. So that's a very, very cool feature. It also brings a lot of ventilation to the main area. So if you've got kind of a hot day, it starts to heat up in the cab and you just pull this up, all the heat sort of gets sucked up with it. Also with this is basically a sunroof, or whatever you want to call this thing. It just provides a ton of natural light and it's just a really, really cool part of this van. Pretty good look at the bunk up top. Now, it's a pretty big bunk up here. It's about 6 feet long. It is only rated for 200 pounds total. However, I have heard from a kind of unofficial source, let's say, that you can easily fit 2 adults up here and you don't have to worry about anything to do with the weight. I actually prefer the privacy, kind of comfort, and just general security of sleeping down low. But, on a nice hot day and with a nice view out front, this is kind of a really cool place to jump up and nap. If you do plan on putting kids up here, that is definitely a very good option. You can easily sleep 4 people in this van. The downside actually comes down low, which I'm going to talk about in another section. Now, despite this, I love the pop top on this van. It just is such a cool look from the outside. It gives you lots of additional headroom. For me, I just kind of like the idea of just having this one space I can stand up. That's kind of the biggest problem with these short vans, is you never have a place that you can stand up and change or just stretch. I can sit here in the kitchen and cook a meal, or stretch my legs. It's really a very cool setup. All right, so let's move back down to the bedroom / living room, and I'm going to talk about what really sold me on this vehicle when I bought it. This window and this window and the window behind me and the window in front, it's just absolutely incredible. So with these 360-degree views and including amazing view going out this sunroof, it's just like a perfect place to lounge. And then when you turn this front seat and the driver and passenger seat around, you can easily hang out in here with 4 people. This is sort of where the downside comes in of this particular setup. So this is the seatbelt system back here. This and this. And that's it. Now, if you grew up in the 80s like I did, you're laughing at this because, these seatbelts were kind of standard, but now to have that 3-point seat system is a pretty big deal for a lot of people. Now, another great thing about this setup is when you're ready for bed, you just simply pull up on this part here, the bed flattens down, and depending on where you store the back of the bed, you're basically ready to go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about utilities here before we go into the trunk of the vehicle, or the garage of the vehicle, as I like to call it. So first of all, there is no air conditioning in this vehicle, unless you turn on the cab and start up the air conditioning, which works fantastic. But there are lots of options to kind of keep this vehicle cool. There's lots of ventilation available, and there's lots of modifications people have done to add additional air conditioning. Now, I'm going to cover all of those in a completely separate video where I talk about heating and cooling this vehicle, because it's a pretty important option. There are 2 100-watt solar panels on the roof. I find those bring in about 10 amps when they're fully in sunlight. There are 2 100 amp hour smart lithium ion batteries underneath the seat, which is why there's really not a lot of room for storage. Now, what all these specs really mean for me is that there is plenty of battery power in this vehicle for my needs. I gotta say, I'm a pretty heavy electronics user. I've really never had any issues keeping these batteries full. I really don't have any complaints about the electrical system. The entire thing is controlled by this Spider control unit here. They're very standard on a lot of RVs. I've got a touch screen with living room, reading loft lights in this thing, each controllable with a dimmer. The water pump can turn on and off. There's a porch light on the side that turns on at night, for getting in and out. You've got control of your freshwater and your gray water tank. You can see how much is left or what percentage you've used. I can see my propane usage, my total amount. I can see the current temperature. That will not drop, so there is no air conditioning, remember. So if you're 27 degrees Celsius, you want it to go to 20, this is not going to work. But it does work the other way around. This is an area where the Tofino just absolutely excels. There's a 16,000 BTU furnace in this vehicle. It's just located right down here and controllable with the control panel. You pick a temperature, you set it for the night, and the furnace will kick in and out to keep the cab at the perfect temperature. It cost me about $1 to $1.25 Canadian to keep the heat going on a very, very cold night. I pushed this thing up to about 30 degrees Celsius below zero, and I've really had no issues keeping the cab actually really warm. So another huge factor in terms of heating this vehicle actually is the insulation, and I think this is something that PleasureWay did a really great job of on the Tofino. The insulation is pretty thick. You can tell by the height of the floor and the difference between the height of the floor and the step, how much insulation is in this vehicle. But probably the biggest factor for me is all of those utilities are actually contained within the insulation. So that means your electrical and your plumbing is not running outside of the vehicle where it can freeze if you want to use this vehicle 4 seasons. There is one weakness to this system, and that is the gray water outlet. This is the only part of the vehicle that's not really insulated, and because it falls down below the actual running boards of the vehicle, it's not only a risk for getting hit, but it's also the water inside of that thing can freeze. So this is a modification people have already done. I think it's something that has to be fixed, because if you want to use your water in the winter, you really can't have, a certain part of it running outside of the vehicle and freezing. But overall, I think the utilities have been awesome, and I really don't have any complaints when it comes to utilities. All right, so with the bed down, you can see there's quite a bit of room back here. It's just about the size of a queen bed, maybe a little bit smaller, but there's plenty of space back here. And for me, I do like a firm mattress, and this is a very firm bed, but if you like a more softer mattress, there is the option to go upstairs and grab the cushion, bring it down, and you kind of have a nice, soft, comfortable bed. Overall, I really don't have a lot of complaints about this bed back here. I mean, with the doors open, the breeze coming through, this has just been an incredible experience sleeping in this vehicle. There's lots of privacy in here with all the window shades down and the blackout curtains in the front. I mean, it really is just a great place to sleep. Another really cool bonus feature about this bed is although you can't sleep across this way, it is really good for lounging. And if you put, some bedding or maybe a bag or some cushions on this side, you can actually sleep a 6-foot person from one side to the other. All right, so let's move to my favorite part of the van, which I've been calling the garage. So this is where the flexibility of the Tofino really comes into play. As you can see, there is a ton of storage available back here and a lot of different configurations and a lot of different uses. So this is where if you're a mountain biker or a kayaker or an ice climber, you can really customize this back part of the van. You can put whatever you want on the side, or if you're just looking for storage, you could build shelves or you could build cabinetry. The main thing that I love about the back here is that, I can put as much as I want underneath. I've got access to a hose here for cleaning gear, a shower, or even cleaning my pet. And, there's really unlimited amount of things that you can configure back here to meet your needs. So all you have to do to sort of bring the bed down is just grab this back bar here, bring it up to the front. There's little magnets here that sort of slide in, and now you can bring the bed down from the top. So you can now see that you've got a perfectly made bed. Now the issue is you can't really access anything that's underneath. So if you're traveling with this van and you want to store things, you got to make sure the stuff you store underneath is not things that you need every day or at night. So what I typically do is put all of my extra items down here, things that I don't really need to access, and anything that I need to access at night or in the van, I kind of store up top. The other awesome thing about this back area is this bug net, which I'm going to show you in a second. It's just so configurable. There's so many options, and you can get this really nice view sitting out the back if you're having a nap or you're lounging. So let me kind of show you how these work. So the door's open here right now. I just grab these 2 latches. This rolls down, and then I can zip this up on the side, and you've got a nice bug net, keeps mosquitoes out and allows the airflow to go in. What's really cool about this is that if you want to go inside the vehicle, you don't have to unzip everything. You basically just use the magnets right here and open this up, and you can just go inside the vehicle. If we take a look at the back of the vehicle, there's actually quite a few configurations of that same style of bug net that's on the side. All right, so starting with this is completely open. There's no bug net set up. I mean, same thing as before. You just grab these things and let it roll down. Now you've got full privacy, complete blackout with these curtains. The next configuration is a little tricky, but if you just grab the zipper here And now you've got kind of access to the top with the blocker at the bottom so people can't see what's kind of in the bottom part of the compartment here. There is one more configuration. It's a little bit hard to do from this side, but basically if you reach underneath, you can actually kind of look out and get a nice view, and you get some good ventilation. The last one, I guess, if you want to do it, roll this part up here. Now you've got access to the bottom, but you've got the top blocked off. So very, very flexible. This was an add-on for the Tofino. It is completely worth the money. If you are buying one of these things, do not buy the Tofino without this add-on. All right, so moving outside, I absolutely love the look of the Tofino. I feel like there's really nothing else on the road that looks quite like it. It comes in red, silver, and kind of a dark gray. I chose the red. I just thought it looked stunning, but all the colors look really amazing. For me, this is a vehicle that in my 87 Westie, had a lot of people that would look at me and stare and ask questions. I get more questions and more stares with this vehicle than I did with the 87 Westfalia. There are a few little things about the exterior that I probably would change. You know, at some point I will probably add a lift kit, you know, improve the suspension, and maybe get rid of these running boards, and I'm definitely going to fix that gray water. Do wish they actually tinted the two front driver's side and passenger side windows, as I did add the optional roof rack. To be honest, I probably am not going to use this. It's really hard to put stuff up there, and with the pop top, it's not super practical. Love to have an awning on this vehicle, but actually the more I use it, I realize that I actually needed was something I can kind of move around. What I was interested about the moonshade is how flexible it is to block the sun and to help a little bit with cooling. Tofino did come with an option to paint the side panels the same color as the rest of the vehicle. They're normally kind of a black rubber looking feel. I did take this, but it was probably a mistake. I've actually started to see the paint peel, and when I brought it to a local body repair shop, they said probably not something that should be painted. So I will have to get that fixed. It will be under warranty, but if I did it again, I might just skip that paint on the side panels. All right, so we're back inside the van, which is definitely a good thing because it was very windy outside, and I hope you could actually hear what I was saying about the exterior. But this kind of brings me to the final part of this video, the conclusion, and answering this question is this $70,000 RV worth the purchase price? And the real thing you got to understand about this is that PleasureWay is a local company for me here in Canada. They're based in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and they have one of the best reputations in the industry for build quality and warranty. So warranty is really the biggest reason why I bought this vehicle. I mean, coming from a 1987 Westfalia, every single year I was investing money and money and money and more money into just keeping this vehicle on the road. This piece of Volkswagen van that has caused nothing but trouble came to the point where I was probably spending more time with the vehicle getting repaired and fixed than I was actually out adventuring. So the idea of having a really great warranty, and PleasureWay's is a 5-year cab warranty. So all of the things that you see that they've customized about this vehicle, you have 5 years of coverage. That was a really huge deal for me. And then this is built on a 2019 Dodge ProMaster, which has its own warranty. So anything that goes wrong with that, I can get fixed. At least for the beginning, I felt pretty confident that I wouldn't have to be spending a ton of money, you know, month after month, year after year, just to keep this vehicle maintained. You know, I have had quite a few things go wrong with this vehicle. They're all very minor. I can list them all in the description, or I'll link you to a spreadsheet or put them on the screen. I don't know. But you know, all of them were pretty minor, and all of them were covered by either Dodge or PleasureWay, and that's like just a huge advantage for me and a peace of mind. I mean, all I've paid for at this point is really a few oil changes, and you know, that's pretty good. So for me, I did consider building my own van, and I would have probably built it very similar to this van here. I just don't trust myself to be able to do the type of work that I would want to do to keep it at a standard where it wasn't going to break down, I wasn't going to have issues. I've seen some beautiful van builds on YouTube, and I've seen them in person, and you know, kind of behind the scenes, people tell you there's a lot of things that they build that they just regret doing. And
something's going on because we
don't have the right jack.
Oh, someone recommended that you hit it with a hammer.
You've got 10 starts remaining.
Serious buzzkill right there.
Didn't know what they were doing when they built the van, and hey, that's an awesome experience. That's something that, you know, one day I'd maybe love to try to do, but at this point in my life, I really want to spend more time out adventuring and using this vehicle than actually spending building it. Basically, my decision to buy this vehicle, in terms of the asking price, I mean, for me, this vehicle was worth it. I mean, it's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but there's a couple key factors here that kind of can make this vehicle more affordable for you if you're thinking about purchasing one. There's a lot of options when you buy a new vehicle from an RV dealer. You can certainly pay cash and walk out of the dealership with the full ownership of the vehicle. You can also take out financing yourself and use that money to purchase it. And you can also finance it through the dealership, and there's a lot of nuance to this and a lot of research you need to do. Traditional vehicle that you might lease for 5 years, there are options to lease these vehicles for up to 20 years. Like me, where you've got a profession like photography or videography, where you've got, to be on the road, or you need a mobile studio, there's actually some pretty awesome tax advantages of having a vehicle like this as well. So there's a lot of different things to consider with the Tofino. You can use it as a daily driver. That's something that I do. I do have an older truck that I keep where I live in the Canadian Rockies. But this vehicle is basically the vehicle that I drive every day. So for me, 100% worth it. For you, maybe not. But overall, when you factor in the warranty, the reliability, just the features and things that are in this vehicle, I think it's worth it. Those were my impressions of the 2020 PleasureWay Tofino. Thanks so much for watching this video. I gotta say, this was a lot of work to film. You can see right now I've actually emptied out this entire vehicle to film this review. And on the next video, I'm actually going to do a proper van walkthrough, talk about what I bring with me on the road, customizations, modifications that I've done to this vehicle. I also want to thank the PleasureWay Tofino Facebook group. They've been a huge inspiration for all sorts of modifications and changes that they've made to this vehicle. I would suggest you search for PleasureWay Tofino Facebook group and go and ask some questions and talk to the people on there. I'm trying to put out these videos every 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the content. It's going to cover everything from traveling in this van, reviews of gear and equipment for photography, as well as outdoor adventure. Leave me a comment if you found this video useful. The like will help me a lot as well, and you can subscribe and even turn on notifications if you're one of those crazy people that need to see the videos the second they come out. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.